to let them catch me act. It's really, what I strive for is to make people think that's the first time.
Hollywood has always been a place of lights, fame, and endless illusions. The stars we admired on the silver screen were carefully shaped by studios to be larger-than-life heroes, their public images spotless, flawless, and untouchable. But behind the scenes, the truth was often far more complicated. Few stories capture that contrast better than the hidden life of James Garner. Known to millions as the witty gambler in Maverick and the tough detective in the Rockford Files, Garner's charm seemed effortless. To fans, he was the picture of masculinity, handsome, confident, and irresistibly likable. But in the shadows of old Hollywood, whispers circulated that James Garner carried secrets he could never share publicly. Before his passing, hints and private conversations suggested that Garner had lived a double life, one where he quietly dated some of Hollywood's most famous gay actors in an era when being true to oneself could destroy a career. This is the story of James Garner's hidden truth, the names he revealed, and the heartbreaking reality of living in a world that demanded silence. James Garner was always seen as the everyman's hero. Born James Bum Garner in Norman, Oklahoma, he didn't grow up dreaming of fame. His childhood was marked by hardship. His mother died when he was young, and his father struggled to provide. Garner grew up tough, resilient, and more grounded than many of the Hollywood peers he would one day join. After serving in the Korean War, he stumbled into acting almost by accident, first taking small roles before catching his big break as Brett Maverick in the 1950s. From that point on, his career skyrocketed. Audiences loved Garner because he wasn't like other leading men. He didn't have the cold aloofness of Cary Grant or the hyper-polished aura of Rock Hudson. Instead, Garner was approachable, warm, and funny. On screen, he was the kind of man people felt they already knew. The neighbor, the friend, the guy you could trust. This relatability made him one of the most bankable stars of his generation. But Hollywood, especially during its so-called golden age, was never what it seemed. Studios worked hard to control their actors' personal lives. Contracts often contained morality clauses, meaning any scandal, even whispers of being gay, could end a career instantly. For stars like Garner, navigating private desires and public expectations meant creating a split between who they truly were and who the public believed them to be. Garner was married to his wife, Lois, for decades, and to most, it appeared to be a traditional Hollywood love story. But as years went on, subtle remarks and anecdotes from those closest to him hinted at another reality. Friends later claimed that Garner confided about private relationships and discreet encounters that never reached the tabloids. In private moments, he allegedly admitted that Hollywood forced him to live carefully, forming quiet, secret connections with actors who understood the stakes. It's important to understand the world Garner was navigating. This was the same Hollywood where Rock Hudson, one of the biggest stars of the 1950s, was forced by studios to marry a woman to cover up his sexuality. It was the same environment where Tab Hunter was blackmailed by gossip magazines that threatened to expose him. James Garner, like so many others, was caught in a system that demanded silence. In public, Garner embodied the confident, heterosexual leading man. In private, though, there were whispers of an inner life much more complex. Biographers suggest that the real James Garner was someone who sought genuine connection in a world where intimacy often had to be hidden. To him, secrecy wasn't about shame, it was about survival. The cost of honesty was simply too high. By the late 1960s and early 70s, when Garner was at the peak of his fame, Hollywood was beginning to change, but not fast enough. He had become a household name through the Rockford Files, cementing his reputation as one of the most beloved television stars of all time. Yet, despite the fame, there was a loneliness that clung to him. Friends recalled that Garner struggled with the contradiction of living a life everyone admired, while knowing parts of himself had to remain invisible. James Garner was, in many ways, Hollywood's perfect illusion. He gave the world a hero to admire, but carried secrets that only a select few ever truly knew. The public saw a star, but behind closed doors, Garner was quietly forging connections that would never make the headlines. Old Hollywood wasn't just about red carpets and flashing cameras. It was a carefully controlled machine. Every actor was a product, and studios worked tirelessly to craft their images. If an actor's personal life didn't align with what the public expected, then the studios intervened. They staged relationships, arranged marriages, and planted stories in gossip columns to protect the illusion. For men like James Garner, who carried private desires that didn't fit the mold, this meant living a life full of contradictions. Behind the closed doors of mansions in the Hollywood Hills or private gatherings far away from the paparazzi, a different world existed. Stars who could never reveal their true selves found comfort in each other's company. These gatherings were often small, intimate, and understood to be places of absolute discretion. For Garner, this secret network was more than just socializing. It was a lifeline. It allowed him to connect with other men who shared the same risks. Men who knew what it meant to play a role off-screen as much as on. Stories began to surface from those who knew Garner best. He was said to have formed deep, quiet bonds with fellow actors who were also trapped in Hollywood's double standard. The names whispered in connection to him weren't random. They were some of the biggest stars of the era. Rock Hudson, for example, loomed large in the secret gay circles of Hollywood. While publicly presented as the ultimate leading man, Hudson privately struggled with his own hidden relationships. Garner and Hudson were often rumored to have been close, sharing not only professional respect but private intimacy away from the cameras. Another name linked to Garner was Tab Hunter. Known for his boy-next-door looks and squeaky-clean image, Hunter's career was nearly ruined when Confidential magazine threatened to expose his sexuality in the 1950s. While Garner managed to escape such public scrutiny, the two reportedly bonded over the shared pressure of hiding parts of themselves. Their connection, while never officially confirmed, remains one of the enduring whispers of old Hollywood. It wasn't only romantic connections that marked Garner's secret world. There was also a sense of solidarity among gay and bisexual men in the industry. They knew the dangers they faced: blackmail, tabloid exposés, and the constant fear of being outed. In this climate, trust was everything. Garner built relationships on loyalty, surrounding himself with a circle of actors who would never betray his confidence. But living in this shadow world took its toll. The secrecy meant that even joyful moments were tinged with caution. Every meeting had to be planned carefully. Every glance in public had to be measured, and every word spoken could be twisted into gossip if overheard by the wrong person. For someone as naturally open and genuine as Garner, this double life was exhausting. Despite these challenges, he carried himself with grace. On set, he remained professional, friendly, and unflappable. He didn't drink excessively, didn't cause scandals, and wasn't known for outbursts. He seemed like the model Hollywood gentleman, yet those who knew him privately say that he carried a quiet sadness, a longing for the kind of openness that wasn't possible in his time. For fans, James Garner was the ultimate straight-shooting cowboy or private detective. But for those in his private circle, he was something else. A man navigating a forbidden world, searching for real connection in an industry built on lies. As the years went by, James Garner became more reflective about his life in Hollywood. While he never made a loud public declaration about his private relationships, close friends and biographers revealed that he dropped subtle hints, sometimes in interviews, sometimes in conversations when he thought he could trust the person listening. These fragments, collected over time, suggest that Garner carried memories of secret relationships with some of the biggest stars of old. Hollywood. One name often mentioned in these whispers is Montgomery Clift. Clift was one of the finest actors of his generation, celebrated for films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. He was also known for his inner torment, struggling with both his sexuality and the pressures of fame. Clift's circle was small and he trusted very few. Garner, with his gentle charm and ability to keep confidences, reportedly found a connection with Clift during the height of their careers. Though never publicly confirmed, those who knew both men have suggested that their companionship was more than friendship, bound by the need for understanding in an industry that offered little compassion. Another name tied to Garner is Anthony Perkins. Best known for his chilling performance in Psycho, Perkins lived a life that was, like Garner's, shaped by secrecy. Perkins was frequently seen at Hollywood gatherings, and several accounts place Garner in the same rooms, quiet, watchful, never drawing attention to himself. Some reports claim that the two shared a brief but meaningful relationship, marked not by grand gestures but by the quiet comfort of being able to drop the mask, even for a short while. Garner's private life was not filled only with fleeting encounters. Friends close to him have said that he formed deep emotional bonds with certain men, relationships that lasted far, longer than casual rumors might suggest. While his marriage to Lois remained intact on the surface, insiders claim that Garner lived with a careful balance, devoted to his public role as husband and father while privately nurturing relationships that Hollywood would never have allowed him to acknowledge. The list of names tied to Garner has always been murky, a mixture of truth, half-truth, and speculation. Some say he confided admiration for stars like Rock Hudson and Tab Hunter. Others claim he spoke wistfully about men who, like him, lived double lives in silence. The difficulty in separating rumor from reality is part of what makes Garner's story so haunting. We will never know for certain all the names he carried in his heart, because much of that part of his life died with him. Yet what matters more than the specific names is what those relationships represented. They showed the human cost of Hollywood's rigid image-making. Garner was not a scandalous man. He wasn't reckless, and he wasn't looking to shock anyone. What he wanted was connection, love, and companionship. The fact that he had to find those things in secret tells us more about Hollywood's cruelty than it does about Garner himself. When James Garner passed away in 2014 at the age of 86, the tributes that poured in painted a familiar picture. Fans and colleagues remembered him as the witty charmer, the dependable leading man, and the rare Hollywood star who seemed both approachable and untouchable at the same time. But beneath the accolades, there was a quieter conversation among those who knew the man. Behind the image, a conversation about the secrets he carried and the truths he never fully shared. Garner's life is a reminder of just how much Hollywood demanded from its stars. To millions, he was the ideal husband, the strong hero, the picture of American masculinity. But the whispers that followed him, about the men he had quietly loved, the actors he had dated in secret, paint a far more complicated portrait. It wasn't scandal that defined Garner's private life. It was survival. His choices reflected the harsh reality of a time when authenticity could mean ruin, when even a rumor could destroy a career carefully built over decades. What makes Garner's story so striking is not simply that he had hidden relationships, but that he endured the heavy burden of living in two worlds. On the one hand, he enjoyed success that few actors ever achieved. On the other, he lived with the constant tension of knowing that part of his truth had to remain locked away. The secrecy wasn't about shame. Garner was never ashamed of who he was. Instead, it was about protection, not only for himself, but for those he cared about. In later years, friends and biographers noted that Garner became more reflective. Though he never spoke openly about his private relationships, he offered hints, small remarks that, in retrospect, were admissions. He acknowledged that old Hollywood was built on silence and illusion, and while he had benefited from that system, he had also been trapped by it. His guarded confessions suggest that he longed for a world where love didn't have to be hidden in the shadows. The men tied to Garner's story, Rock Hudson, Tab Hunter, Montgomery Clift, Anthony Perkins, were not just lovers or rumored companions. They were fellow travelers on the same difficult path, men who carried the same burdens of secrecy. Together they formed a hidden history of Hollywood, one that speaks volumes about the price of fame and the sacrifices required to maintain it. Today, Garner's legacy is twofold. On one hand, he remains an icon of television and film, beloved for roles that spanned decades. His performances in Maverick and The Rockford Files remain timeless, a testament to his charisma and talent. On the other hand, his story is now part of a larger conversation about the hidden lives of stars in old Hollywood. Garner's private admissions and the names he dared to reveal add a new layer to his legacy, one that humanizes him beyond the screen. For modern audiences, his story is both heartbreaking and inspiring. Heartbreaking because it reveals the cost of silence and the loneliness of living a double life. Inspiring because it shows resilience in the face of a system designed to erase authenticity. Garner didn't live to see a Hollywood where actors could be openly themselves without fear of losing everything, but his quiet courage contributed to the foundation for the change we see today. In the end, James Garner's story is not defined by scandal, but by survival. He was a man who gave the world laughter, charm, and unforgettable performances, all while protecting a truth that was too dangerous to share openly. His name will always be remembered for his work, but those who look deeper will see a more complex figure. A man who loved, who longed, and who lived with secrets that only time would finally bring into the